This is going to be my second video update coming to you from Glifada, Greece, a suburb about 20 minutes outside of central Athens. This is the beach area where the Athens Riviera begins. Back in the day when I used to come out here, this whole area was open beaches, but now it's all closed off. And it looks like to get to the beaches, you have to drive a good, maybe, 10 minutes down that way. And that's where the real beach area begins, the Athens Riviera, where you have a lot of nice beaches, beach bars, nightclubs, and stuff like that. But I remember a time when all of this area right in back of me, that used to be beach area, but not anymore. Looks like they shut all of that down. So let's walk to the center of Glifada, to the main area square of Glifada, and let's talk about some news. And in my first update, I talked about how there was an American base in this area, and that's why it kind of reminds me a lot of the U.S., the architecture, the sidewalks, the streets. And that base actually wound down in the 90s. And that's when the base shut down, and a lot of the cool Greeks, the Greek elite, kind of moved out here. A lot of the shippers, people in the shipping industry, a lot of entertainers and singers and TV show hosts and actors, actresses, they all kind of hang out around the area of Glifada and the neighboring areas as well. So let's talk about Kissinger, Henry Kissinger, the 99-year-old former Secretary of State. He has a new book where he talks about leadership, specifically leadership after World War II. But he also kind of laments at the fact that we have a lack of leadership today, and that it's driving us towards a terrible world war situation. And he gave an interview to the Wall Street Journal where he was promoting his book, Leadership, 6 Studies in World Strategy. That's the title of the book. And during the interview, he talked about disequilibrium and how disequilibrium is pushing us towards a conflict, a great power conflict in Ukraine, but also Taiwan. I don't know if you remember, but about probably about a month ago, you had the World Economic Forum where Kissinger gave a video speech, and he made the stunning claim, the stunning statement, where he said that Ukraine has pretty much lost the war and they should accept territorial losses and try to find peace and a resolution with Russia. Everyone flipped out in the collective West, including Zelensky and his regime, and they all turned sour on Kissinger after he made those statements at the WEF. But here he is back again, not only warning us about Ukraine, but now warning us about Taiwan and an impending conflict with China. And let me get you some of the quotes or the statements that Kissinger makes during this interview with the Wall Street Journal. Former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger has told the Wall Street Journal that Washington has rejected traditional diplomacy and in the absence of a great leader has driven the world to the precipice of war over Ukraine and Taiwan. Quote, "We are at the edge of war with Russia and China on issues which we partly created without any concept of how this is going to end or what it's supposed to lead to," Kissinger said during the interview, which was published on Sunday. Let's see, what else did Kissinger say? Kissinger argued that the U.S. should seek equilibrium between itself, Russia, and China. This term refers to a kind of balance of power with an acceptance of the legitimacy of sometimes opposing values, Kissinger explained, because if you believe that the final outcome of your efforts has to be the imposition of your values, then I think equilibrium is not possible. So, look, equilibrium is just another term for multipolarity or bipolar world or multipolar world. That's all Kissinger is saying. He's just basically admitting that we are in a multipolar world and the United States needs to accept that. The powers that be in DC need to accept the fact that we are indeed in a multipolar world, and they're going to have to accept compromise. It's just where we are right now. That's basically what equilibrium is. So when he refers to equilibrium, he's actually just saying we are in a multipolar world. And Kissinger also said that we are on the brink of war with Russia and China. Interesting that he said that these are things that the West has partly created. I would say the West takes most of the responsibility for the mess that we're in. You know, this could have easily been solved if the Minsk Accords were adhered to. This could have easily been solved if Zelensky just declared Ukraine's neutrality. This could have easily been solved if Pelosi didn't travel to Taiwan, and if the United States just adhered to the one China policy instead of just, talking out of both sides of their mouth, saying, yes, we believe in the one China policy, but Nancy Pelosi is going to go to Taiwan and stir things up. So, all of this could have been avoided if the warmongers in DC, many of which are from the school of Kissinger, would just have accepted this multipolar equilibrium world order that Kissinger is talking about in this interview. I'm no fan of Kissinger, coming from Cyprus, and given what Kissinger greenlit in 1974, which has led to the division of Cyprus, I'm no fan of Kissinger, but he is a realpolitik guy, a realpolitik diplomat, and sometimes his realpolitik views of the world are nasty. But in this instance, he's one of the few people that is talking some sort of common sense. At least he recognizes the fact that we need compromise, that we're in a multipolar, bipolar world order, and that the United States is going to have to compromise on various things. So, Poet's Path. Poet's Path. Interesting. Not sure what that is, but that sounds cool. Let's sit down for a sec here. Oh boy. So that's that's Kissinger. So those are the statements that he made to the Wall Street Journal. And it's interesting that he's now talking about Taiwan. About a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, he was talking about Ukraine exclusively, but now we've got Taiwan. And it just goes to show that everything that Kissinger said a month ago during the World Economic Forum, and the warnings that he gave to the collective West, no one listened. They didn't adhere to anything. They have no reverse gear. They want war, they want conflict, they want escalation, and it's a one-way street for the powers that be in the collective West. So instead of de-escalating in Ukraine, we have continued to escalate in Ukraine, and we have now escalated in China and in Taiwan. And a conflict with China now seems all but inevitable. China has, I believe they have fully realized, and they've come to the conclusion that they have to bring Taiwan back into the fold, and that the U.S. will indeed break from the one China policy sooner or later. And they've come to that conclusion, and this makes some sort of conflict, something happening in that region, inevitable. So no one listened to Kissinger when he gave his WEF speech. No one is going to listen to Kissinger now. And since we're talking about Taiwan, let's discuss Pelosi and her trip to Taiwan, and a Daily Mail report, which is highlighting the the trip that Pelosi took to Asia with her son, Paul Pelosi Jr. I talked about this, gosh, like 3-4 days ago. I talked about the fact that Pelosi dragged Paul Pelosi Jr. to Asia with her, and she didn't really mention anything about Paul Pelosi Jr. tagging along on this Asia trip. As a matter of fact, Pelosi's office went out of its way to hide the fact that Paul Pelosi Jr. was accompanying his mom on this Asia tour. And we know why they were hiding that fact. And it has to do with this Daily Mail report, which highlights Paul Pelosi Jr.'s business interests in Asia. They are actually reporting that Paul Pelosi Jr., as he was accompanying Nancy Pelosi, his mom, on this Asia trip and accompanying her to Taiwan to stir up all kinds of trouble, that he is heavily invested in a Chinese 5G internet, telecom, Internet of Things company known as Borks Technologies. Not only is he heavily invested in this company, Paul Pelosi Jr. is the second biggest shareholder in this Chinese internet telecom company. He has 700,000 shares in this company, second only to the CEO of Borks Technology. And you now have opposition parties in Taiwan who are questioning the ruling party in Taiwan as to whether this trip from Pelosi and her son was more of a business trip rather than a political, foreign policy, geopolitical trip. And rightly so are they questioning the intentions of Pelosi's trip to Asia. Though it's interesting that Paul Pelosi is heavily invested in a Chinese company and he was actually traveling to Taiwan. This is kind of interesting, but 700,000 shares. Paul Pelosi must be one rich dude. Anyway, that's the Daily Mail. They're talking about this. All kinds of media outlets are now picking this up, but check out the Daily Mail article. I'll put a link for it down below so you can read what they are reporting. Not what I'm reporting, what they are reporting. And let's shift gears and talk about, since we're talking about corrupt institutions and corrupt politicians, let's talk about the European Union, Joseph Borrell, and what he has told Georgia, a country that tried to get candidate status into the EU. And Borrell told Georgia that the setback of not getting that candidate status to the EU can easily be fixed, and he gives his recommendations. Now, the two countries that did get the candidate status to enter the European Union a couple of months ago, it was Ukraine and Moldova. They're the ones that got candidacy status, and Georgia didn't get it. And Borrell explains why. This is according to Borrell. He says that this was indeed a setback for Tbilisi. But however, quote, we have seen setbacks in the key areas of rule of law, governance, and human rights. And he urged Tbilisi, whose European perspective was formally recognized by the bloc in June, to take a responsible and conscientious approach that matches its stated objectives and its citizens' aspirations. Oliver Verhelyi, who's in charge of growing the EU, in charge of enlargement, told Georgia that the ball is now in Georgia's court. A serious commitment to democratic consolidation, judicial reforms, strengthening the rule of law, as well as fight against corruption and organized crime will be key. This is according to the EU's Foreign Ministry Office, Borrell, this guy, Verhelyi, and all of these technocrats, kleptocrats in the EU. This is what they're saying Georgia needs to do in order to achieve that candidacy status in the European Union, which I don't know why anyone would want to join the European Union at this point in time, given that it's a we'll take anybody club and it's a dying institution. an authoritarian. The closer it gets to its demise, the more authoritarian and more corrupt the EU is becoming. But anyway, there's a lot of money in it for the 0.001% that can manage to swindle their population into believing that this is a good idea to enter the European Union. But forget about all of these recommendations. To everyone that's watching in Georgia, forget about all of these recommendations that Borrell and his team are making for Georgia in order to qualify as an EU candidate country. Judicial reforms and democratic consolidation and fighting corruption. Give me a break. The EU is about the most corrupt institution you can get. Democratic reform, what the hell does the EU know about democracy? You're talking about an unelected group of bureaucrats who have no idea what an election or democracy means. And judicial reforms, well, I mean, just take a look at Assange and you get an understanding as to what human rights and judicial reforms mean for the European Union, for Europe in general, and the collective West in general. This is complete nonsense. I'm not even going to go into austerity, bank bail-ins, wars in Libya, Syria, Serbia, where else? Iraq, Afghanistan. I'm not even going to get into all of that. But that's nonsense. This recommendation list from the European Union to Georgia is ridiculous. Georgia only needs to do one thing to qualify for the European Union. One thing. Antagonize Russia. There you go. You're in the European Union. Congratulations, Georgia. You're going to destroy your country, of course. I mean, you understand that. Antagonizing and escalating with Russia means the destruction of your own country, but you'll get into the European Union. That's the trade-off. Destroy your country, get into the European Union. Keep your country safe and fair and balanced and prosperous, but you won't enter the European Union. That's the trade-off. If you escalate and antagonize Russia, if you possibly, open up a second front with Russia, if you decide to provoke Russia, if you decide to even start a conflict with Russia, well, then you're guaranteed entrance into the European Union. That is all you need to do. This other list and all this other stuff is garbage. Everyone knows it, including the European Union. They know it's garbage. All Georgia has to do is escalate and antagonize Russia. Bonus points if you can escalate and antagonize China. That'll get you even more bonus points. You'll probably be fast-tracked to EU membership quicker than Moldova and Ukraine, if you can antagonize China as well. But that's the advice that I have to give to Georgia if they really want to get into the EU. Remember, the trade-off is you get into the European Union, but you destroy your country. That's the trade-off. Stay out of the European Union, keep your country whole and intact and safe. That's the trade-off. Clown world. Let's do a clown world and wrap up this video. And I think this clown world, well, I was going to talk about Trump and the warrant and the fact that they're saying that Trump is going to be charged with espionage, the Espionage Act, and they seized boxes where Trump had some nuclear codes and all this stuff. But this is just too clownish. I think this story is too clownish for even my clown world. You know, here we are again. Trump, espionage, Putin puppet, Ukraine gate, Russia gate. He stole the nuclear codes, or he had boxes of nuclear information. It's like the nuclear codes are like your Google, like your Gmail password. That's what they make it sound like. You know, whoever has this nuclear password, well, they can just launch nukes anywhere in the world if someone gets a hold of these codes that Trump put in a box and he tucked it away in Mar-a-Lago. It's so dumb. The whole thing is dumb. You notice? Here's something to think about that I was kind of kicking around. And these two stories are completely unrelated in a way. I mean, these are two different news stories. But isn't it interesting that we have the mainstream media pushing a nuclear catastrophe in Ukraine, Zaporozhye, and they're egging on Zelensky to do something in Zaporozhye to create a nuclear meltdown, a nuclear catastrophe, so they can blame Russia, while at the same time blaming Russia for some sort of nuclear crisis. And they're also running now with a story blaming Trump for some sort of removal of nuclear codes or information and endangering the well-being of the United States, and possibly charging him with some sort of espionage crime or something like that, because supposedly he had some sort of nuclear codes or nuclear information that he smuggled into Mar-a-Lago. Isn't it interesting how we've got two nuclear-related threads going on at the same time? I was just wondering if I could get through here. I just found that interesting that the script writers in DC and Hollywood, they've decided, I guess, to play up the whole nuclear thing. You know, it seems like they want a nuclear crisis. They want a nuclear catastrophe. If I didn't know any better, it seems like that's what they're wishing for. Anyway, yeah, you know, a nuclear crisis in Ukraine, and that amplifies Trump's nuclear espionage thing. I can see how they're working it, kind of. I'm starting to understand the propaganda script writers in DC. I'm starting to understand how they think. Let's do a real quick clown world, and it has to do with travel to Kiev. Traveling to Greece is just not cool. Don't come here. All the cool kids are going to Kiev. And Dan Crenshaw from Texas, he was in Kiev. And a whole bunch of other Congress people were in Kiev. But the interesting part about it is that they're going, from what I understand, without the Biden White House's approval. And the Biden White House is now coming out and they're saying, don't do it. Don't travel and grovel at the feet of Zelensky unless you get our permission. White House warns of dangers as Congress members take unauthorized trips to Kiev. Biden has yet to go to grovel at the feet of Zelensky, by the way, but everyone else has made a trip to Kiev, whether you're an EU leader, whether you're the Prime Minister of Australia, whether you're Trudeau or in the U.S. House or Senate. Everyone has gone to Kiev in order to bow down at the feet of the clown puppet leader that wears high heels, including Dan Crenshaw. And Crenshaw said that the Biden White House shouldn't worry because Dan's a Navy SEAL and he knows how to handle himself. But Congress is basically telling all of these guys and girls that are going to Kiev to not go unless they get White House approval. Lindsey Graham was there, but they're saying that it's dangerous unless you have the approval of the White House. The Hill underscores the administration began withholding approval over fears that security provided by the U.S. military risked a direct confrontation with Russia if American service members were wounded or killed. As for the potential for a lax security situation with the unapproved trips, Senator Graham earlier admitted that his trip never received State Department approval, given it didn't feel it had the footprint on the ground to take care of us. So they're providing like their own security details and all of these things. Anyway, you know, all these people, they're traveling to Kiev. Obviously, it seems like it's pretty okay to go into the country via Poland, I imagine. You travel via Poland to Kiev, which is pretty much center of Ukraine. And they're meeting with Zelensky, who's coming out in his green t-shirt costume, and they're taking their photos. Some of them are even getting like little awards or plaques from Zelensky, or some of them are giving Zelensky awards or plaques. And yeah, everything is fine. You know, Kiev, that's the place to be. And what a strange war. What a strange conflict this is, isn't it? Really strange conflict. And you know that if Russia really wanted to destroy Ukraine, like the collective West talks about, they would have taken out Kiev first and foremost. That would have been the first spot that they hit. But you know, Kiev is still a place where everyone can travel to and meet with Zelensky, no problems. Anyway, that is my video, everybody. theduran.locals.com. Check out Alexander's. What was that? That was just a pine cone. I stepped on a pine cone. Theduran.locals.com. Check out Alexander's channel. Check out the Duran's channel. And what else? Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, and Telegram is where you can find us. And anyone that is pretending to be me or Alexander or the Duran in Telegram or YouTube, please ignore them. We will never, ever, ever, ever ask for your telephone number. We will never ask you for investments and stuff in the comment sections or on Telegram. We'll never give out a number, a phone number, a WhatsApp number. We'll never do that. So just ignore these scammers, ignore these trolls. I try to clean them up as much as possible, but the more I clean them up, I take out one of them and 10 come back. But just ignore them. Ignore all the Telegram DMs or messages about investment and this is my telephone number and comments saying this is my number, call me. Ignore all of that. It is not me. It is not Alexander. It is not the Duran. That is the video, everybody. Take care.